Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of All Things Crime. Man, I'm excited to be here. And I'll tell you, over the past year especially, it seems that, I don't know if child abuse and sex trafficking and all these kind of just absolute, it's just inhuman, some of the things that are happening, especially to children. And we've had numerous guests and episodes on this kind of thing, all the way from sexual assault detectives to the executive producer of The Sound of Freedom, a new movie about child trafficking, especially through Central and South America. And today, I have two guests on that I'm super excited about. And I want to introduce them using a video from their website. And this video kind of describes a little bit about who they are and what they do, and then we'll expand on it. So welcome to the show, Cookie and Nytro, but I want to start with your video because it's just such an amazing video. So here we go.
What do I get out of BACA? Wow. The knowledge knowing that I've done something that no one else can do. And that's to give a child their life back.
BACA is probably the only organization that can do what it does that exists in the world right now.
The goal of BACA is eventually to break the chains of child abuse, so that these children don't grow up and bring what happened to them into their relationships.
First found out about BACA through my counselor, and she said that we should look into this, that BACA was a group of bikers who help and they support kids who've been abused. Before the abuse, I do remember like a happy, just normal life.
Rhythm was very carefree. She was loving and fun.
When I told my mom, she talked to me for about an hour.
She came in and she said, I'm being abused and I want you to know I don't want it to happen anymore. I want it to stop.
My extended family didn't think my story was true. They thought a lot of it was made up. I had night terrors. I was seeing like 2-3 counselors. That was partially why my counselor informed us about BACA.
Level 1 is the first interaction that the child's going to have with the entire chapter. It's where we bring that child in and make them part of our biker family.
Leading up to the night of my level 1, I was kind of like not sure what to expect. All I knew is that there was going to be a lot of bikers at my house in the morning.
When a child's been brought into BACA, and we decided that it's a case that fits our mission, we as the chapter as a whole will ride off to wherever the child feels safe at to meet. That means the whole chapter goes. Everybody's had a background check for bride.
There's a little bit of a ceremony that goes on with it. The child's reminded about the initial contact where everything is explained to them, what BACA is, what we do, what we don't do.
We present them with a vest, and it has a patch on the back of it and their road name, and it just makes them feel part of.
They get assigned two of the members as primaries. Those members are on call for that child 24/7 around the clock.
Peppermint, would you like to meet your primaries now? We have Rembrandt and Lucy. Rembrandt and Lucy have always been here for me, and BACA will always be here for you.
Hi, Peppermint. I'm Lucy. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, Peppermint. I'm Rembrandt. It's nice to meet you.
Seeing this like group of adults, bikers, like being so kind, not even bringing up what happened to me, just saying like, hey, we're here for you, like we're your new family. It meant the world to me.
The level 1 is probably something that is the most empowering part of what we do, because we see a huge change in these children. After about 40-45 minutes, those kids are interacting with our members. In some areas, they go for rides with the membership. They take them on a short ride around the neighborhood.
They looked at her like she was just another amazing young kid.
We're just there just to empower them, to show them that there's people out there that really care about them, and that they're becoming part of our family. And then when they become part of our family, that we have their backs.
When there's a court case, if the judge allows us, we will escort that child to the courthouse. A lot of times when kids go to court, the family members of the perpetrator will show up and they try to intimidate that child.
Carry me home when the light in my eyes does fade. Carry me home when the shadow comes to take me away. Lay down my bones, knowing I'll be in a better place. Release my soul, carry me home. Carry me home, there's a sour down in the ground. Carry me home, don't you weep for right and freedom bound. Lay down my bones, there is peace within the light I found. Release my soul, carry me home.
Are you scared?
No,
You're not?
my friends are a lot scarier than he is.
Carry me home when the light in my eyes does fade.
When I see these kids, the light come back into their eyes, I get more out of BACA than I could ever put in.
Standing up for child abuse is probably one of the bravest things somebody can do.
You see them after we get involved, and their self-confidence is beaming. They're doing better in school, and they're not afraid anymore. And that's what we do. We give them their life back.
I grew as an individual. I joined clubs in high school. I became varsity captain of the cheer team. I was a vice president. I'm going to college. I owe that to every single person in my life, especially BACA, who stood by me and who supported me and said, it's okay to be scared. We're here for you until you're not.
Nobody gets paid in BACA. Everybody's volunteer from the president down.
We, my brothers and sisters, will do whatever we can to make sure that they feel safe. And when we do that, they can trust again and they can start being kids again. That's what I get out of BACA.
Everything on this patch means something. The white is the innocence of the child.
The red is the blood that's been shed.
The black represents the dark times that that child is going through.
The skull and crossbones is death to child abuse.
The fist is our commitment to fight child abuse. And the chains on this patch stands for one BACA, one united nation. This patch means everything to me. This is my family.
If you are being abused, if you are scared, tell somebody.
Okay, so I'd say that video just always says it all. But again, welcome to the show, Cookie and Nytro. I know you guys are out of Arizona, and just so honored that you would come on to the show. So welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jared. We really appreciate the opportunity here.
Of course, absolutely. So, Bikers Against Child Abuse is the name of you guys' organization, and BACAworld.org is the website. So, I strongly encourage all of the listeners to go to BACA World, BACA world.org, and see some of the things that you do. You can watch that full video and also just kind of get a flavor for what these guys do. But I'm embarrassed to say that prior to connecting with you guys, a month ago, I'd never heard of it. So I'm super glad to be able to, have you on today as guests and to, expand the base a little bit of, from my listeners and the viewers. We broadcast this both on YouTube as well as all Spotify and all the other platforms. And also, by the way, encourage everybody to subscribe and share this message, because what you guys do is amazingly important. And I think there is far too many children. What people don't understand is our children are our future. And even if you're in your 20s and you're watching this, there will be a day when, you got gray hair like I do, and you're going to, your kids are buying you glass. I don't know if you can see this. It says, "Old Lives Matter." That's what I got for my last birthday. So, my kids are even in on it, and they're just hammering me with, "Dad, you got to start coloring your hair, man." But I keep it short color. It just doesn't.
Well earned.
Yeah. So, Nytro, let's start with you. Could you kind of introduce us to the BACA organization and kind of how, what your mission is and just kind of how the organization came about?
Absolutely. I am Nytro. I'm with the Maricopa County chapter here in Arizona. BACA started back in 1995. The founder was a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapist. And he was working with children that were making some incremental changes. But what would happen was either the person that abused them or the family members would go by the house and harass the child, and the child would shut down. And, he was just tired of seeing that. So he, got a few of his buddies together and said, "We need to stop this. We need to do something about it." He has since retired, and we are continuing his legacy. And, it started in Provo, Utah, and now we're in 22 countries, working at Costa Rica, Romania, and Portugal. And we're not going to stop until, we reach more and more kids. Unfortunately, in my lifetime, we're not going to reach as many as we want to, but doing these podcasts is what helps us. I've been around for almost 28 years. We are in 46 states here in the United States. I think it's Mississippi, Wyoming, and not Wyoming, one of the Dakotas, I can't remember, Delaware and Hawaii. We don't have chapters, but we're working on those. Some of the states surrounding those, except for Hawaii, it'd be a little difficult. We'll go and help a child. We'll ride 800 miles. It doesn't matter. If the child is in need, enough is enough. We're going to help them out. We go to court with them to help them stand up and give their impact statement. We're here to empower them, not enable them. We're not big brother, big sister in the sense of taking them shopping, things like that. We're that shadow. So when you need us, we're going to be there. We get a phone call, we're at their door. We're helping them out, whether they're frightened or family members of the perpetrator or the perpetrator themselves are trying to come to the house. You're going to see us. We've had enough. But in court, it's very scary for them. It would be scary for me as an adult. We don't want what happened to them to define them. And it's like you said, Jared, they're our future. And, if we can't get them there safely, what does it say about us? So, a lot of these kids end up on the streets and drugs and gangs and the sex trafficking, they lure these kids. And enough is enough. We have to wake up to this. People turn a blind eye, and you got to open up your eyes. Just because it might not be your child, what if it was? Then you'd want somebody to step up. So then you need to step up for another child.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Well said. And I think it's one of those where, how do I even say this? What you said about it may not be your child, but if it's somebody even in your community that is being abused, that is affecting your child, and it's affecting you indirectly. And, Cookie, I wanted to ask you, is there a particular child or a particular story that kind of started this? There's a legacy behind every child that's being abused. Is this mostly, do you focus mostly on like foster care, or is it just any child that feels in danger?
So, we work with a variety of different agencies, foster care, Department of Child Services. We work with local and state agencies that are already in place helping abused children. But we really have three simple requirements for us to actually get involved. And it comes down to these three things. Is it a verified case of abuse, meaning that there's a police report or a counselor statement that says, yes, this child has been abused? Is the child living in fear, which is, again, a counselor or an adult or someone that can verify that. And then, the third thing is that whoever did this to them, the perpetrator, doesn't live in the same house or facility that the child is in right now. Those three things are in place. We are a free resource. There's no cost to these families or children to have us come in. And, we're able to empower them by doing one thing, showing up. We show up, we stand behind them. And just like I'm there for Nytro and Nitro's there for me, if she called me at 2:00 in the morning and said, hey, I need you, I'm not asking what, I'm not asking why, I'm hopping on my scoot and we're there. So we give those kids a sense of that empowerment and bring them into our family and let them know that no matter where they go, near or far, BACA is there for me. My sisters are here for me, and BACA is now going to be there for you.
Yeah. Wow. How many kids can I think of just in my immediate circles, and kids that I've heard of? And I don't know if you guys know what I do for my day job, outside of the podcast, but we help collect DNA off of evidence. And a lot of times I'm working with detectives and crime scene analysts that the victim is very often either a woman or a child. And it's just sickening, the increase in, you would think as we become more and more, quote, quote, civilized, that this kind of stuff would taper off. We'd become more, better at treating each other as equals and everything else, and not abusing each other. But for some reason, it just seems to be getting worse. And especially the targeting the children. It's, to me, I don't know, as a man and a dad of 5, it just doesn't make any sense to me how people can like look at a child and, think of it, just view that child as a piece of meat that they can, abuse in sexually or otherwise. And to me, I'm sure that's the same passion that you guys have. And again, talking with you prior to this and seeing the video and doing research on your organization, I think everybody that belongs to and does what you do, whether they're contributing or whether they're actually getting on a bike and physically going somewhere to help a child, everybody is contributing to help overcome this fear that these kids live in. And it just seems that there's more and more households that they don't have a stable environment. And is there any kind of a insight that you guys have as to why that's happening?
I think a lot of it has to do with the laws need to change. When my daughter's best friend's baby was brutally beaten to death, brutally beaten to death, he was only 8 months old. He couldn't find off anything. He got 18 months in jail and 3 years supervised probation. What is wrong with our system that allows these people back out on the street? And, it's the technicality or whatever it is. I don't know, but it's really frustrating. We've been to court many times where there was enough evidence, but for some reason, this person doesn't get what they deserve. They get minimal time, and we have to look at this better, for our kids, because, when those perps or whatever get out of jail, that kid's back in fear again that they're going to come and retaliate, and it shuts our kids down, and it's got to stop. Our laws have to change. I can't tell you how many times we've been in there, and it is frustrating. A lot of people ask us, how can you do it? And I ask, how can you not? How can you not go to court with these kids and help them stand tall? It just a lot of things just need to change. And a lot of it is the law. Years ago, it was a family issue. We heard stranger danger, but unfortunately, a lot of these kids are getting abused by family members or friends of the family. They know how to groom them. They know how to get to them. And I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that our system doesn't protect our children better. I knew back in the day that people, got caught cultivating marijuana or did more time or life, but you can kill a child and that's what you get. We're so backwards that that's what we need to fix. And society, both parents have to work. It's tough. You want to have a family, but then you're away from the family because things are rising and you're working 2-3 jobs to make ends meet. My husband works hard. I work 2 jobs, plus BACA, and it's time consuming. I can't even have a dog because I'm not home enough. So think about the ones that have children, it's really tough and frustrating. We are humans, but when you abuse a child as your outlet for being frustrated in any manner is no excuse.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Cookie, you had something to add?
Yeah. I mean, you also look at, we've got some cases that they get drug out so long. I mean, you're talking year, 2 years. And you think of, okay, someone could go in for something like a speeding ticket and they're only cared about $500. And all of a sudden that happened on Monday and you're in court Thursday paying your ticket and you're done and out of the gate. Yeah. You get someone that's his perpetrator and they're giving him every single privilege and right of due diligence, given the heinous crimes. Sometimes they're not even locked up until they have a conviction. And so, with these cases that are going on, it's like we need, like she said, it's like stricter policy around when these cases come up. Why is this guy still on the street being able to harm and offend continually while they figure it out? I think, again, it comes down to the policy and that, you look across the board right now, we have a lot of resources dedicated to, internal policy and review. We have more resources looking at the policies and how police operate versus actually, investigating the police instead of investigating crime. There's just the nature of, the past year and a half, 2-3 years of everything. And I think we've
Yeah, I'll throw a little tidbit out at you. I deal with crime labs a lot, and there are, not all of them, but there are crime labs that I know of that literally spend 90% of their time getting ready for inspections as opposed to actually processing cases. So if you think of a few years ago when we had all those rape kits that were discovered were just sitting on shelves, and I know of one particular agency in Texas that had over 13,000 untested rape kits. Well, when you have backlogs like that, and then you compound that with the fact that most of the time the analysts aren't even processing those cases, they're actually getting their paperwork in order and getting ready for an inspection. It's like, yeah, you just create these bureaucracies and these complete inefficiencies that slow everything down, because a lot of times, and I've known of other cases where a woman was raped, they sent the rape kit in. It took over 8 months for that rape kit results to get back, which proved that the guy did rape her. And in the meantime, he had raped 3 more women.
Yep.
And it's the same, I think, for children, because again, children are in even a higher risk category, in my opinion, than women are, because they're not adults yet. And so if they have somebody that's either abusing them, well, it doesn't matter if it's physically or sexually, then as the investigation goes on, if that person is back out on the street, then that child, I can't imagine, the kid just has to be petrified. And that's where I was just so excited to learn about you guys. And, you always think of the big brother type thing of, if my little brother is getting picked on in school, I'm going to just drop by the school and talk to that kid and make it stop. Well, you guys are kind of the biker version of that, which is fantastic. It's, and I know you guys, it's not your mission to intimidate. It's just your mission is just to make it stop. And so that the process can continue in the way that it should without that child living in fear. And I love on your website, it actually says no child should live in fear. So that's just fantastic. So Cookie, why don't you tell me, and Nitro, you can follow. Tell me about the favorite time that you met a child and you were able to help that child with whatever problems that they had.
Well, I mean, it's hard. They're all unique and special in their own way. I think the one that I remember most is it was a recent case, and we had to take this girl to court. And it was it was like a 4-day court case, and we're just there 12 hours every day. And afterwards, she came up to us and she wanted to give us something. And just to think, it's like, we don't need anything. We're here to support this kid, but just the mindset of this, I think she's 13, years old, 13-year-old girl that just went through this whole entire court case, was able to tell her story, have her day in court, watch this guy get put in handcuffs and taken away, and watching her, just the look in her eye, knowing that I at least don't have to worry about this guy for the next 50 years.
Can I ask what he was doing? I mean, without, lots of details, but.
I mean, Nitro is that I just don't want to overstep boundary. I mean, it's just bad stuff, man. You let your imagination, let me put it this way. You can't unhear things when you go into court.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, you think of this from the perspective of a child. And, it's like, well, where did, they're going through all these questions. Where did he touch you? How did he touch you? How many fingers did he use? And you're sitting here and we can't make a face. You got to sit here and look straight at the wall, not be able to say anything, because you can't do anything out of place. It could be intimidation. They could throw the whole case out. So you literally have to sit there and listen to this. And it's the worst of the worst. And I know Nitro's been in the organization much longer, and there's some horrific cases that have come across. Some of them are national attention cases where it's just like the unimaginable things that these people do. And you're just looking at this little child. And it's like, yeah, as a parent, it's watching them be able to be empowered to tell their story. That's the fill the cup moment. Watching them change from the minute that they're hiding behind their parent and they see 15, 20, 35, 40 bikes show up for the first time, and they're not hiding anymore. They're not timid. They're out there we had one kid the other day, he read someone's name tag and was like, "You don't know how to spell right." And so it's like for a child to come from a place of feeling so scared that they can't even talk about it or fearful, to the ability to come around and, be sarcastic and make fun of the adults with all of our crazy names, it is a sign of that healing taking place. And when fear's not there, the counselor's job is easier. When fear's around, the therapy stops. They can't progress if fear is present. So that's I guess the biggest thing in my takeaway is just seeing those little minute changes, just in the look of their eye, where it's a weight lifted off their chest. And it's something that, unless you're there and can see from start to finish, when we show up for the first time, you wouldn't notice it unless you're physically seeing them and just the presence that they have after we show up and be involved in their lives.
So yeah, before you tell your story, Nitro, in the video, it shows, like you said, 30, 40 bikes showing up, and they're all parked there on the street. And then you guys all walk across the street to where the mom and the child are sitting there, or standing there in their driveway. Is that first encounter? Is that pretty typical? What you guys do?
Yeah, the first encounter basically is getting that phone call, and then our child liaison and part of the board will go and make sure that it's a legitimate case. It has to be a legitimate case. We do get phone calls that says, I'm going through a divorce. Can you come beat up my husband? It's like, no, we don't do that. Yeah, so it has to be a legitimate case. But yeah, once that's done, then we all go. I mean, they're like little brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? I won't let anybody hurt my own children. I am not going to let anybody hurt another child. I don't care if they're blood related or not. But when, like Cookie said, when you look in their face and you see fear, and the next minute, they're on the bike and we're giving little rides around the neighborhood, and they're leaning back, waving or putting a thumbs up because they want to go again. They're excited. They feel comfortable for the first time in a long time. I think they empower us. Our paycheck is seeing that smile on their face. None of us get paid for what we do. It is all we're going to ride anyway. Now we ride for a very good reason, but just seeing them smile, we've had some pretty serious cases, but this brotherhood and sisterhood that we have in BACA is one of the most phenomenal things that I have ever been a part of. Actually, it's the longest I've ever been a part of anything, even a job, because I believe in what we do. All we have to do is make a phone call. And it's amazing how many people will show up from different states, different countries. They'll ride in, fly in, drive in, doesn't matter. We call for, like Cookie said, all we have to do is make a phone call and they don't even have to give a reason, but just to see them, I love it when they do get sarcastic. That says they're comfortable with us, and that's a bonus.
Well, anybody that's an adult that isn't just spurred to action immediately when they hear of a child that is in danger, to me, just isn't worth their weight in salt. So, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way.
Yeah, I don't want to get involved, but, again, if it was somebody in their family that was hurt, they'd want everybody to get involved. It's kind of contradictory. It's not my problem, but yes, it is, because when that kid grows up, he grows up angry and your house gets robbed by that kid. Now it becomes your problem and you want something done about it. You should have done something back then to help this kid. And that's the cycle that needs to be broken. You know what I mean? So they are so worth it. I don't understand it. Like you said, Jared, I don't understand how anybody can look at a child and hurt them. I just don't. There's other ways of dealing with things, but beating them or sexually abusing them is just, I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Another big thing where I think people just kind of miss the mark on a little bit is this. It's the perception of who these children are. And just to clarify what I mean is, it doesn't matter. We roll into just as many trailer park area homes in the ghetto as we do in upper class ritzy neighborhoods that have mini mansions in them. And so it's like this, I think there's a perception out there that child abuse only happens in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods or just where you would think it looks like something would happen here. And it's just not true. This is happening widespread. This is happening by the people that you would least expect it. It's the guy with a Rolex and a suit and in a Lexus car rolling up to a stop, not the guy in the creepy, window tinted whiteout van that all the movies portray as the bad people doing kidnapping and stuff. So I think it's a big concept for people to understand is this can happen in any neighborhood. This can happen in any park, any household. There is no bound socioeconomic wise of when abuse can take place. And we need to start waking up as a society and being those eyes on the street. Our business owners, our the serious community leaders, all the stuff in the church organizations and everyone, we are the first line of defense by the see something, say something. And that's where we have to be looking everywhere, not just in places where you think or associate in your mind that it looked like it would happen here. The truth is it can happen anywhere. We need to be watching no matter where we're at.
Oh, that's well said, Cookie. And
yes,
I actually interviewed, I don't know if you've ever heard of Jim Clemente. He was a FBI profiler, and he's kind of the inspiration behind Criminal Minds, that TV show.
Yep.
And the guy's brilliant. He's awesome. And one of the things that he said that he emphasized over and over is that the thing that you were talking about, Nitro, that the stranger danger that we used to talk about, that's not where the danger is really coming from.
Right.
Most of the time, kids that are being abused, especially the sexual abuse, is not coming from a stranger. They are being groomed by someone, that a neighbor, sometimes even a family member, cousins. There's all sorts of directions that these children are being endangered by. But a lot of times they know the person that is grooming them, and that's why there's an immediate level of trust, and then that person is acting on them. And so that's why it's so critical to teach children. It's not necessarily stranger danger. This is the type of behavior that is not acceptable. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Uncle Charlie or, your cousin Susie. They are not allowed to touch you here. They are not allowed to do this. Those kind of, they're tough conversations, but every parent needs to have those conversations with their children. And that, because the child is also a line of defense. They may not be able to physically defend themselves, but they can tell you if something like that happens and they're aware of it and they know that that's a warning sign, then they can alert the parent to what's going on. And then hopefully a lot of that abuse can stop. But prior to or post that, criminal action has to happen, and they have to go to the courts. That whole intimidation factor, getting some guy will get his buddies to come and sit in a courtroom and stare at the kid, or, whatever, stare at the family. Those kind of things to me is just, and like you said, even in the wealthier neighborhoods, it's the same thing. The person's proclivities toward whatever abuse that they denigrate themselves into, then that's not a economic thing.
Yeah, there's some, I think what gets us a lot is that, Cookie had mentioned it quite a while back, that, in the courts, we've had kids who've been waiting 5-6 years, not months, years, because that perpetrator has more rights than they do, because they can change their attorney umpteen times right up to the end. Oh, no, I'm going to fire them. I need another one. Then that attorney has to have time to look everything over. Then they use that attorney. Why are they allowed to do that? Why do they have more rights, than that child? I mean, I know personally for me, you take the right of a child away, you should lose your rights. But that's just me. But I mean, we even had somebody stand up one time during a presentation, said, how do we know you bikers are 100% on the up and up? I'm like, well, you tell me an organization, a foundation, a corporation, a police station, a church, school that is 100% on the up and up. There's no such thing. There's always going to be something in there that is just not going to be right. And it's teaching these kids the right things, but basically it's waking up people. If you haven't seen Sounds of Freedom, please go see it. It is not a joke. We're the worst in the world. That just makes me sick. The United States is the worst in the world. $150 billion business. Our children? What? I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm vets, pets, and kids. Our vets, thank you both. Have made it possible for us to live the way we live. But our children and animals are the two things in this world that give us unconditional love. And they're abused the worst, and because they can't speak up. And I'm like, no, we're going to speak up for them. We want to give them their voice back. We've had enough. A lot of us have been through abuse. I personally have. And nobody was there for me. I don't know how I came out of it, but I did. But it was difficult for me with my kids. I thought that I was supposed to do to them what was done to me, but I wouldn't do it. I kept saying, no, I didn't like it. Why would I do that to my children? And my son told me at 25 years old, Mom, you broke the chains of child abuse in the family. I never realized that I did that. But the fact that he was aware of that, he knew what I went through. It does break it because he's very good to his kids. All my kids are good to their kids, so there's that break in that chain. And that's what we need to do. We need to stop putting up walls and fences and taking care of each other. Enough is enough.
Yeah. Well, Nytro, is there a particular child or case that really hits home for you?
There's been quite a few. I've been involved 15 years. I'll have 16 years in April. And there's been some horrific cases. There's been some where the parents don't keep in touch with us, so we don't know what's happening with the kids. But we do know that these kids won't forget, because there's times where kids have seen us out, whether they moved to another state or not, and saw BACA and said, "Hey, I was a BACA child." It's like, what? And then we kind of get those phone calls in and stuff. But we had the one that affected me the most. We went to court with little sister. She's probably, I want to say 14, 15. She had to go 3 different times. One for her aunt, one for her grandmother, one for her uncle, family members. And her little sister was killed. And when they showed the little sister, when they got her out of the box, I almost lost it in court. I've never seen that, because she wasn't laying flat. She had rigor mortis had set in. And I had 2 BACA brothers sitting next to me and little sister behind me. And they're like, "It's all right, Nytro. It's all right, Nytro." They recognized my thing, but I had to maintain, because we don't want it to have a mistrial or anything like that. And I'm like, who am I to get upset when she's the one that has to deal with this and see her little sister up there? 3 different times that she went for her sister to stand up and get justice for her. But sad that she had to do that to her own family, and that her own family treated her that way. And she is a powerful kid today. I mean, a powerful kid. The brother never went to court. He didn't want to. Boys will internalize things, and that's the tough part. We're not here to take the therapist's job or anybody's job. We do what no other organization does in the world. We're just here to help. That's it, especially foster kids. I was a foster kid in like 7 different homes, and I was angry. I didn't like him. "You're not my mother. You're not," even though that's what's my abuser, but I was angry. Had I had somebody like this helping me, I might not have been so angry, because I would have had that outlet. Not saying that the therapist isn't the outlet, but bikers, let me think about it. I'd rather have them around and feel more comfortable, because none of us ask that child what they went through. None of us do.
Yeah.
Because we don't need to know. We just need to know you're hurting, little brother, sister, and we're here. 24/7, 365, they can call us. And that's why I've been a part of this organization for so long. I just want to be able to do something, put a smile on a kid's face.
Well, there's a reason that every child has a door that closes to their bedroom. There's a reason they have security blankets, or a favorite pet, or even a stuffed animal, something that they can a lot of times grab onto, and that gives them a little comfort, a little security. But I'm sure that there are a lot of kids out there that, like you said, are BACA kids, that just knowing that there is somebody out there that they can call, that it's an outlet that would enable them to be safe again if it worse came down, then yeah, I can't imagine the good that we're doing. And we're just getting a little piece of it here, and that's one of the reasons I was so excited about having you guys on once I recognized it. So
it's the impact of empowerment without stepping over the lines of what other agencies and counselors and everything does. They don't do what we do. Even the police don't do what we do. I mean, for law enforcement, think about this. At some point after that crime scene, you have to leave. You've got to go back to the line of duty, and you can't be there for that kid. How many of the officers are sitting there really questioning whether or not they should leave that property that night because of the circumstance, the situation, but don't have a choice because that's not in their line of duty to sit out and do 24/7 security on a house that has a child living in fear. That's our mission. We'll sit out in front of the house 24/7 to make sure that child's not living in fear. So it's a community effort that we'd like to approach with what our organization provides, where we're not stepping over the lines of counselors. We're not stepping over the lines of law enforcement in what everyone has a place and a job to do. We have one thing. We show up and we empower kids not to live in fear. We don't condone the use of violence, but if we're the only obstacle between that child and further abuse, we stand ready to be the obstacle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're just
well-
a phone call away.
Yeah.
That's it.
I can't imagine too many guys are going to be bold enough to abuse a kid when there's a bunch of bikers outside.
I'll give you an example. I'm 6'2", maybe 280 right now, and there's some people that make me look small. Okay, you know, we got a guy named Hambone. He's about 3 times the size of me. So
Hambone, right?
And the kids love it. I tell you, when we go to do what we call the level 2, and that's where we camp out on their lawn if there's a threat. You know, family members will drive by and they'll call us names, and I'm like, oh wow, I never heard that one before. You know what I mean? But that child will look out the window to make sure we're still there, and we stay there until that threat is gone. You know, and whether it's 1 day, 7 days, 30 days, around the clock, each one of my brothers and sisters, we take turns. You know, we mean business, you know, so, and, you know, and I'll tell you what, the police love it because they can't, like Cookie said, as much as they want to, they can't, you know, so we're just another avenue to help, you know, so I know a couple of times we've gone to foster homes where the kids are in there and the foster parent will be like, what did you do? They're listening, you know, because they feel all of a sudden that safeness. I don't have to be that angry anymore. And then they want to go to their therapist. And a lot of times if they're afraid to go, well, we'll go with you, not in with them, but we'll go with you. I'll be right out here in the hallway when you're ready, you know, and they're like, really? You know, they don't know that there's just whatever it takes is pretty much our motto, whatever it takes.
Yeah. Well, not to get too cheesy, but you know, there are some movies out there that, to me, especially as a veteran, as I'm watching these movies, you know, certain lines will kick in, and hopefully everybody can relate with what I'm saying. But one of my favorites is A Few Good Men, and yeah, even though they're Marines, you know, I was we tolerate the Marines, but you know, in that movie, they're talking about, you know, the soldiers in particular, and when Demi Moore basically says, you know, why do you like them so much? And she says, because they'll stand on a wall and they'll say, nothing's going to hurt you tonight, you know, while I'm here. And I kind of look at you guys and what you do. And it, you know, like he said, if you're willing to, if you need to be spending the night on their lawn, then that's what you'll do. And you know, on your watch, that child is going to be safe that night. And to me, that's just such a just an absolute amazing part of your entire organization. And you know, Nytro, as we wrap up here, what can people do to help?
Read the videos, spread the word. You know what I mean? We want people to view the video. We want people to, like you said, research us. You know, we're real. We take what we do very, very serious. And you know what I mean? Ask questions. Of course, there are going to be people out there that don't like us because we helped that child in court to stand tall and their family member or whatever got put away. We didn't do it. They did. You know, the perpetrator put themselves there, not us. But we don't care. Not everybody's going to like us, and we're not going to like everybody. So, you know, but basically it's spreading the word. There's chapters that are struggling. They don't have the resources that some others do. Please go to the website, click on chapters, click on the country that you're in, you know, or the state that you're in, support those chapters. whether it's monetary, our jean jackets, because we pay for therapy. We put on a summer and a winter party for them so these kids can play together. And I'll tell you what, that's when we call it BACA allergies. We get tears in our eyes because they're kids. They're having fun, at these parties, and they're swapping numbers, kids helping kids. How great is that? And we get them their little cuts. They get a little road name. We give them a blanket, like you were saying, like a security blanket. We pass it around to all members that are there at the level 1, and we hug it. We do presentations everywhere. Please get with your local chapter, ask for a presentation, whether it's in a church, PTA, school, teachers, doesn't matter. Me, I'll talk to anybody from 1 to 10,000 people. I don't care. I truly believe in what we do, and we just need people to wake up, so spreading the word about who we are, and, please research us. That's what we want.
Yeah. And the best place to go is BACAworld.org. It's BACA world.org. And that initial video is up there, and just loved seeing that. And just seeing that little girl, and it just looked like, she had a smile on her face, and she was just like, yep, I'm safe. With these guys around, I'm safe. And, like your website says, every child deserves that. And,
Yes.
There's nothing closer to God than a little child. And, animals, yes, they are right there too, but the children are the best of us. And, a child playing, again, one of the moments that I remember the most when I was interviewing, again, the executive producer of Sound of Music, is he said that moment where in the movie, after they had saved all the kids and the Colombian police had come and arrested all the traffickers, and the kids were just playing and they were laughing, and the joyous sounds that only children can make, that is the sound of freedom. And
Yes.
every child deserves that. So I sure appreciate you guys coming on. And again, go to BACAworld.org and donate to their organization. Fantastic concept, and just the things that they do just come straight from the heart. And that's really what this country needs right now. And it's what the world needs, really. So guys, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and we will definitely help spread the word. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jared, so much for this and the opportunity to get that awareness out there.
The pleasure's all mine. Hey guys, we will talk to you later.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.